This regular meeting of the Detroit Lake City Council is called to order. And at this time, I'd like to invite all of you to please stand and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the regular city council meeting held on May 14th, 2019. Does anyone in the audience or any member of the council wish to make any changes to the minutes as printed? If not, I would entertain a motion for their approval.
I so move.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. The consent agenda is before the council, and all items with an asterisk are considered to be routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the general order of business, and considered separately in its normal sequence on the agenda. Is there anyone in the audience or any member of the council wish to add or remove any items from the consent agenda? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda as printed.
So move. Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. Tracy Bruggeman with Brady Martz and Associates is here this evening to address the council regarding the audited 2018 financial statement. Welcome, Tracy. Thank you for coming.
So first, I'd like to thank you for hiring Brady Martz, and secondly, I'd like to thank the City of Detroit Lakes staff for their assistance during our audit. On page 1 is the independent auditor's report. The city received an unmodified opinion, which is the same opinion you received in the prior year. In our opinion, the financial statements present fairly in all material respects, the financial position and the changes in financial position in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. On page 17 is the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance for the governmental funds. The general fund balance increased $387,000 and ended the year with a fund balance of $5,282,000. The statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position for the enterprise funds. The total enterprise fund net income before capital contributions and transfers was $13,700,000. On page 99 is our report on Minnesota legal compliance. We noted no instances of non-compliance. On page 100 is our report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance and other matters. We noted no instances of non-compliance. On page 102 is our report on compliance for each major federal program and on internal control over compliance required by the uniform guidance. This year we audited the capitalization grant for clean water, state revolving funds, and the results of our tests disclosed no instances of non-compliance. Any questions?
Any questions for Tracy? Thank you. Thanks for coming. So was that supposed to be a public hearing? No, not necessarily. Okay. The audited 2018 financial statement is before the council, and I would entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second it.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the audited 2018 financial statement for the City of Detroit Lakes. Discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Approved. That motion carries. Megan Smith with the Detroit Mountain Recreation Area is here. And without objection by the council, I'd like to jump to item 7B, subdivision 1 and 2, under the Finance Committee.
Yes,
Madeline?
item 1 is consideration to approving the 2020 budget and rates for the Detroit Mountain Recreation Area. And Megan, if you just wanted to highlight a couple of things for the council?
Yeah, absolutely. Wanted to just give a real quick recap that we were open 81 days this season, and then that we had over 43,354 visits. So another record season for us at Detroit Mountain. So just a couple other recap items was the amount of season passes that we sold this year was a record going back to first season. We sold 12,388 season passes, and that was due to the fact that we had went back to season 1 price rates and brought those back, and we will be doing that again this year for the prices.
Okay. So do we want two motions here, Kelsey? One for
Yeah,
the budget
yes,
and rates,
because
and then
it's-
the other item would be a separate item?
Yep.
Okay.
So the Finance Committee reviewed the budget and the proposed rates for 2020, and I so move approval.
Second it.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the 2020 budget and rates for the Detroit Mountain Recreation Area. Discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries.
Item B under that letter is consideration to the Detroit Mountain Recreation Area funding request. I believe that the email from Jeff, the general manager, Jeff Staley, is in your packet. And maybe I'll call on Kelsey just to kind of review. This comes as a result of attempting to finish what was requested under the Legacy Grant.
Mayor and Council, if you recall, our legacy grant included various components, land acquisition, trail construction, the parking lot construction by the tubing hill, and then also a playground and treehouse. And again, if you remember last fall, we were doing some bids for the parking lot, and we started getting indications that we're probably going to be over budget. We bid it out again this spring, awarded a contract, and currently we're about $86,000 over budget for that parking lot. And basically that overrun in the parking lot is putting a strain on the rest of the budget, the rest of the grant budget. And the request is basically an additional appropriation from the city using food and beverage tax money to cover that overage for the parking lot. So basically puts the project back on budget, so that way we can fund the remaining components, which include the playground and the treehouse, and basically hopefully get the project done. At the Finance Committee, we also reviewed kind of the cash flow for the food and beverage tax fund and how this would impact it. And if you have any questions, try to answer it. Or City Engineer John Pratt's been involved in the project too. I'm sure he can answer any questions. So.
Any questions by the council?
I've got a question. Where are we at on we rejected bids last month on the treehouse? Do we have any idea how much that is going to end up costing? Because if we're coming back to the well again, we may as well come back for a known amount rather than giving the 86,000 and then come back saying that we can't do the treehouse for X, Y, or Z. So just wondering where we're at with that bidding phase.
Sure, I'll try to summarize it. We took bids, as you indicated, I think it was about last month, I can't even remember at this point, for the treehouse and the natural playground. The council ultimately awarded the contract for the natural playground, which came in just slightly over budget, but manageable. Some things could be trimmed out of that to basically keep that right at the budget at $150,000. The treehouse came in at a staggering like $380,000 compared to the budget at $100,000. So the architect and the landscape architect been sent back to the drawing board to design a structure, a treehouse structure that can fall within that budget or as close to as possible. I haven't heard anything from the architect or the landscape architect as specifically where that's at. I would expect that within the next couple of weeks we would see something on that, because that's got to get rebid out and awarded and built yet really this year, because the grant expires next June. So I would expect to see some action hopefully by July on that.
Any further questions?
Well, John, you're saying a treehouse, but it's actually going to be underground. Is that correct? It's not going to be on top of a tree?
Yeah, that's correct.
Just to let the audience know.
Next to some trees.
Okay, next to some trees, okay.
Further questions?
So what impact would we have if we deferred action on the $86,000 here?
I'm not sure that, this is just my mind, deferring will do much good from the stance that, no, I suppose it could. The food and beverage tax money can only be used for the parking lot. But I suppose to your point, more could be used if the treehouse came in over again. I think in my discussions with DMRA, they're just looking for a commitment from the city, whether or not there's funds available to help offset the overruns in the parking lot so that they have some idea on what's available to spend on this treehouse.
Okay, any further questions? There's a motion and a second.
Well, we haven't made a motion, but
There is
the
not a
finance
motion and a
committee,
second.
the finance committee, we sort of put the horse before the cart, or the
Okay.
cart before the horse system. The finance committee did review this and felt it was a worthy cause for the food and beverage tax to take up that override. So we so move.
Second it.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the request of the Detroit Mountain Area Recreation Area for additional funding for the parking improvements. Further discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
Without objection by the council, I'd like to move to item, Community Development Committee, item 5C. Jamie Brosseth is here for 5C. So, Dan, if we could...
Yep, happy to, Your Honor. So item 5C is consideration of a resolution approving a variance to reconstruct a non-conforming structure farther from the lake and to move 2 patio areas near the house to match up with new entryways at 608 Shorewood Drive. Larry, I hadn't talked to you beforehand, but could you go over this a little bit just to explain a little further what they're doing here?
Well, I think by reading the title, you covered most of it.
Yeah.
Basically, he's requesting approval to move a 360 square foot shed that's in his front yard to a different location in the front yard. State law would allow him to rebuild that structure in its existing location without a variance, but because he's moving it, he needs to have the variance. He's also got a couple of patios that no longer line up with the interior remodeling of the house, so he has to move those so that they match up with the new location for the doors. And so the Planning Commission recommended approval.
Okay.
And the CDC also recommended approval of this. I just want to add in before I make the motion that the resolution includes a requirement, of course, that the project be constructed as shown on the approved site plan, that the owner receive or obtain a Pelican River Watershed District permit prior to issuance of a building permit, and that the owner install a native plant buffer between the structure and the lake as approved by the city. So with that, and again, the CDC recommended approval of this, and I so move.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve a resolution approving a variance to reconstruct a non-conforming structure further from the lake and moving 2 patio areas near the house at 608 Shorewood Drive. And Jamie, you're aware of those conditions that were on there? Okay. Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries.
Pat Peterman's
Yeah,
also.
without objection, I'd like to move to item 7C. Pat Peterman is here from the Boys and Girls Club of Detroit Lakes. Madeline?
We have received a funding request from the Boys and Girls Club. It seems that parking lots have come in much over what the original anticipation was going to be, and the Boys and Girls Club are needing a little extra help funding their parking lot. And so they have approached us asking if we would be willing to consider some additional funding for that parking lot. And I believe the amount was what, Kelsey?
Increase of $125,000.
$125,000. Pam and Kelsey put their pencils to the food and beverage tax, just as they did for the DMRA, and have come up with a way that we feel like we can do that and assist the Boys and Girls Club. It's certainly a worthy cause. So the Finance Committee reviewed it and moves to approve the spending of that food and beverage money.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve an additional $125,000 out of the food and beverage tax for the parking improvements at the new Boys and Girls Club. Anything you want to add to that, Pat?
No, I just want to thank the Finance Committee and the council, and also let you know that August 22nd is our ribbon cutting event, and I'd like to invite all of you to be at that event, I believe at 3 o'clock. So I'll get a formal.
Are you thinking you're on schedule? Is everything going?
We are.
Good, good.
Yep.
Good to hear.
Thank you.
Any questions for Pat?
No question for Pat, I just have a comment.
Oh, go ahead, Bruce.
Well, I support the request, and for those that were in finance, they're not going to be surprised to hear this, but I'm putting a plug in for the council people that weren't there. So, you know, all this parking stuff is great, but please, as you look at that list, don't forget the trails. Because my comment has been, you know, people aren't coming to Detroit Lakes because we got great parking lots. They're coming to Detroit Lakes because they can do stuff. And so as you go forward, that list of trails, make sure you please adhere to that as much as you can, because trying to get these connections from, you know, the east side to the west side or the north side to the south side, all of that is important for us old folks to get around on.
And I would second that. That's a good point. Thank you.
Just like to comment
Yeah,
too,
go ahead.
that, you know, one thing, we have this food and beverage tax, and if we didn't have this tax, there'd be a lot of things that we wouldn't be doing. And tonight we talked about the mountain, Boys and Girls Club, and future going down the road, the new museum. So all this is funded with parking lots, which is one of the uses we can do with that food and beverage. So I'm happy that we have that. Otherwise, that'd have to go on people's home tax. If we would approve it, a lot of this stuff probably wouldn't be approved because it gets to a base how much you can keep putting on the taxpayer. But food and beverage allows us to do this, so we're glad we could do this for all these 3 projects.
Good point. Further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, the motion carries. Thank you, Pat. Without objection, I would like to move to item 5G. Dan and Shauna Friesen are here. 5G, please.
Yes, sir. So this 5G is a resolution approving a conditional use permit to allow a short-term rental of an entire home at 500 South Shore Drive. This is basically allowing what would commonly be referred to as an Airbnb at that location. I think this is the first one we're permitting in Detroit Lakes. It meets all of the conditions that we established for this kind of use, and the CDC recommends approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve a resolution permitting or approving a conditional use permit to allow a short-term rental at 500 South Shore Drive. Discussion on the motion? Bruce?
Just want to make sure, Dan and Shauna, that you saw that condition 4 about just 4 slips total for you and your guests. So that's probably important on the lake. I think that's one of the issues I know I was concerned about. And also to compliment them, they part of this, they had to do some landscaping, and if you've been out there, they're doing a fantastic job of landscaping, so thank you for that.
Good deal. Further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, the motion carries. Thanks for coming. Brian, did you have something on the agenda you'd like to bring up?
Watching.
Better than TV, isn't it?
Been sleeping.
We'll go back to the top of the agenda and we'll continue with the Community Development Committee. Dan?
Thank you, Your Honor. Item A was just a discussion on possible amendments to the city subdivision ordinance, and the thought process isn't closed in here, but we went back. We had some suggestions for the staff. We want them to make some changes, and This is involving the park dedication fee and some discussions we've had with the county on that. And so we asked the staff to make some changes and go back and talk to the county and see what they think about it. And so we'll keep discussing this until we're ready to make a recommendation on a change to an ordinance. So.
Very good, thank you.
And we did item B, and...
We did?
No, not B, we did.
Oh, no, B, thank you. B is consideration to second reading and adoption of ordinance 447, which is the annexation of a 3.65 acre tract of land at 16267 and 16309 Highland Drive, and the zoning of the tract R2, 1, and 2 family at 16302 Highland Drive, and R4 limited multifamily residential at 16267 Highland Drive. Again, this is second reading. We, approved the first reading of it. There have been no changes. CDC recommended approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to give second reading and adopt ordinance 447, annexing 16267 and 16302 Highland Drive and rezoning those areas per Dan's motion. Discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Second reading is given and ordinance 447 is adopted and the areas are rezoned per the motion. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you. I do believe we're down to item D, correct?
Yep.
Thank you. Which is actually concerning part of one of the properties that we just annexed and then zone, but it's a resolution approving a preliminary plat for Highland Estates First Edition, which is a 2-lot subdivision and condominium common interest community at 16267 Highland Drive. We reviewed the plat for this. There was discussion. The Planning Commission had approved it. The owner of this is drawing lines, I guess top hat was the best way that we could describe it, but it fits the requirements of platting, and again, Planning Commission approved it. CDC recommends approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve a preliminary plat for Highland Estates First Edition and a 2-lot, which is a 2-lot subdivision and a condominium common interest community at 16267 Highland Drive. Discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion. Okay, one opposed. So just a quick question, Dan, is it how many, or maybe Larry, how many condominiums is he proposing here? Just number of units?
There's a 4-unit condominium that exists on lot 1 of this subdivision already.
Okay,
And then the other lot expressed what he's planned of.
okay, thank you. Dan?
Okay, item E is a resolution approving the final plat for City's Edge Estates at 28818 Tower Road. CDC recommended approval, and I so move.
Second.
A motion has been made and seconded to approve a resolution approving the final plat for City's Edge Estates at 28818 Tower Road. Discussion on the motion?
I guess I'd just like to point out on this one, this is one of those that are outside the city limits, but with staff review, we were able to get easements for a trail to connect potentially from up County Road 54 out to the Detroit Mountain properties. So through staff work, good work on spotting that and taking advantage of this.
Excellent. Further discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
We're deferring item F, Your Honor. The owners need to do some more work on that before they come back to possibly need to do some more work on that before they come back to the Planning Commission or CDC. We just weren't quite ready to come here with that yet, so.
Can I make a quick
Sure, go ahead.
comment here, Mayor? When this does come back, whether it comes back to council or whatever, I would ask that the council members make sure they look at our new shoreline ordinance 6.41C regarding decks in the shore impact zone before you vote on this, please.
Can you give us a little hint at what that
Well, it
says?
says that you're not supposed to build in the shore impact zone.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, thank you, Bruce. Item G is taken care of. Item H is the Highland Drive area again, which is a request from Bob Spillman to authorize a one-year extension on a conditional use permit for 22-unit condominium at 1502 Highland Drive to June 13th of 2020. CDC reviewed this, recommended approval, and I so move.
Is there a second? Motion has been made and seconded to authorize a one-year extension on a conditional use permit for a 22-unit condominium at 1502 Highland Drive.
Yep. One item of discussion, we did note that this is the second extension on this conditional use permit, and we would expect that something would be done with it before this one expires.
Was there any reasoning given for the need for another extension? Or?
No reason given that I could.
The reason is that it has taken longer than he anticipated to get the road into shape and to get his plans ready for the
Okay. So the motion and the second is to authorize the extension, correct?
Correct. Yes, Your Honor.
Further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And item J is a consideration to approving the sale of a 20-foot strip of land to the property owner at 602 Riverwood Drive, so the apartment building will meet the required setback. The city acquired some property that the land, I should wait for discussion. Recommended, CDC reviewed this, recommended approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion, we're on J, right?
J, yes, sir.
There's a motion and second to approve the sale of a 20-foot strip of land to the property owner at 602 Riverwood Drive, so the building will meet the required setback.
Yep.
Discussion on the motion.
Just the city owns some property adjacent to this. The owner thought that current owner of where the building sits thought he owned it, thought it met the setback at the time, but by selling this property, which the city isn't going to use for anything else, will make it work. Right, yeah.
Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. We got to go back to I now. Oh, see what happens when you retire?
He's not retired yet.
Retirement brain. And this is a good one, too. Terry did a nice job. Anyway, I is consideration to approving a memorandum of understanding between the City of Detroit Lakes and the Pelican River Watershed District relative to permitting activities in the shore impact zone. We work well with the Watershed District. This makes sense. CDC recommended approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve a memorandum of understanding between the City of Detroit Lakes and the Pelican River Watershed District regarding permitting activities in the shore impact zone. Discussion on the motion.
You know, Mayor, maybe we'd have Larry explain that to the audience.
Would you,
what
just
that
a
means.
brief synopsis of that, Larry?
I can be brief.
Okay.
The city and the Pelican River Watershed District are going to agree that the Pelican River Watershed District will issue permits for any activities taking place in the shore impact zone, except for activities that would include any structures such as storage sheds or anything like that. But the Pelican River Watershed District would issue permits for vegetative removal, creation of a view corridor, placement of riprap, placement of a sand blanket, or repair of an ice ridge. So they're out there doing those things already, and we just felt that instead of introducing new permits from the city, that we would just have them take care of that. And
Okay.
they're willing, and
Makes
it
sense.
works for both of us.
Further questions or discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I think that's it, Your Honor.
You sure?
I hope somebody's
Okay.
keeping track of me here. I don't know.
We'll look out for you, Dan.
All right, appreciate it.
We will move to the Public Works Committee. Chairman Imhoff.
Thank you, Your Honor. Our agenda will be quick because we have a couple items to defer, although the city
Okay.
engineer will be talking. So.
Okay.
Item A, I guess we have to defer because we do not have enough votes to pass that, correct?
We want to do the second reading, but we'll have to approve the summary at a later date.
Oh, so we can do the second reading, though?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So consideration, second reading and adoption of ordinance 446, amending the city's right-of-way management ordinance. Public Works recommends approval, and I so move.
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded to give second reading and adopt ordinance 446 regarding our right-of-way management ordinance 302. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
So
Motion
it's
carries. Second
approving the
reading is
summary,
given.
we're going to defer that.
Okay.
Till June 20th?
Hopefully.
Okay. Consideration resolution of authorizing a preliminary engineering report for Long Pines Estate. We talked, John, briefly about just giving a real quick synopsis of this, correct?
I can do that. I wasn't going to say anything, but.
Well, just if you remind the council, this is out by Long Lake.
Yeah, this would be the second phase to Long Pine Estates. We did the first phase a couple of years ago. It's adjacent to Longview Drive. It's basically going to connect Longview Drive down to Brainerd Boulevard, about 12 lots, and the developer's wanting us to move ahead with that.
Public Works Committee recommends approval, and I so move for the resolution.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve a resolution authorizing a preliminary engineering report for Long Pine Estates Phase 2. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries.
Item C is consideration of resolution accepting the report and setting a public hearing on the improvements of the concrete curb, gutter, and approaches and sidewalks for 2019. Public Works Committee recommends approval of the resolution, and I so move.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve a resolution accepting a report and setting a public hearing for the concrete curb, gutter, approaches, and sidewalk repairs for 2019. Discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Your Honor, here's the real meat of the meeting for us, is the engineer's update, and I know we have some projects, John, that you talked about we could probably just pretty much skip over, but there's a couple of those you want to detail for the council, if you would, in public.
I will do this. I'll probably be brief because I didn't bring my sheet, so I'm going from memory. But a few of the things that are going on, we are in full swing here with construction, wrapping up some projects from last year. Thank you, Natalie. We've got Long Lake annexation project that we are hopefully wrapping up this week, if not by early next week, and then that should be done. Same thing with County Road 131 up on the north side of the city. Paving should happen on that, the final paving later this week. Randolph Road, we've got our clearance from MnDOT at this point, so we're scheduling a pre-construction meeting. Contractors indicating that they're looking at starting about the middle of July on that. We are going to be holding a public informational meeting jointly with MnDOT on, help me out, City Administrator, July 11th?
Yes, at 5 o'clock here.
July 11th, 5 o'clock here. Again, the focus of that will be not only the construction project that we're doing this summer, but also the other components of that project that MnDOT will be doing next year, which are signal improvements at Chris Street and County 54. I'm going to skip that one. Westlake Drive, Legion to County Road 6, a lot of work and activity, at least from a staff level in the county lately on that. Several of the council people were there. We did have attended, I should say, a neighborhood meeting with property owners along that corridor, discussed some of the concerns that those folks have. We're looking at different options of what we could potentially do to maybe shave a foot or 2 feet off of that project width to help minimize some of the impact to that. We discussed that at Public Works, and I think I've got some direction at this point to go back to the county and hopefully finalize that. And if they're on board, likely the next step will be another noticed public meeting with that group. So trying to keep that moving ahead. The big one that probably everybody knows about is the Weston Willow project is underway. We got going on that. The first phase of that the contractor's working on is Willow from Washington to about McKinley right now. I think we'll be in that area for the next couple of weeks. It's going along pretty well so far. That project's going to progress from the west or from Washington Avenue, head east towards Jackson. So for the next probably month and a half, I think most of the work is going to be in the Willow Street area. At some point, late July, early August, we'll start some work over on Willow. So a lot of activity. I know that's causing some congestion with traffic, taking Willow out of the equation. We are looking at some options to help alleviate that. We're trying some things with signals right now, and if we need to put up some temporary stop signs, we'll do that. So
Berkowitz subdivision, I'm going to skip that. South Washington, just a quick mention that city staff and county staff are going to get together and start talking about that. We're just getting projects off the ground, as Kelsey mentioned, but we also need to start thinking about projects for next year. South Shore Park, we're working on, a lot of people have been asking, we are working with Brad and his group on getting the first pieces of the South Shore Drive Park going. Brad's got the shelter and things like that he's working with on the architect. We're working on getting the design for the parking lot done, and we'll see some action on that. And we talked about Long Pine Estates, so.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John.
Can I just ask one question here, Bruce? Brad, tell us a little bit more about the South Shore Park. What are we going to see this summer, and what's ultimately going to have for amenities?
Well, we're working again, John mentioned architect and engineer, because we want to lay out and we'll be bidding this stuff out because it's part of the park dedication money and stuff too. We're looking at building bathrooms, picnic shelter, that type of thing, similar to what we have in People's Park now, connecting sidewalks and that to it, and then tie into the parking lot and things for the first phase. We intended to put the playground border and have that ready for equipment. We did not get the out of Bremer grant we applied for. We were notified that did not come through. So we will be looking at some other fundraising and different things and see what we come up with to help facilitate that. What we will be doing right now, we will be out there, we have to mow, we will start mowing and things, and then once we get the plans and the site plan finished, then we'll be looking at bidding that out, trying to get moving some dirt and getting everything set up for this first year for the first phase of the.
So there'll be landscaping, there'll be a building.
Correct.
And some, like a park shelter?
Yeah, park shelter type thing.
And then ultimately, there'll be playground equipment?
Playground equipment.
Will there be pickleball courts?
Also pickleball, basketball court, that type of thing.
That's planned for the future, right?
Yeah, that's will phase in as money's available. But it's a 3-year plan to do this. If we get these big ticket items in this year, the next year, we'll have all the big things, landscape and things in shape where we can start because we also intend to put a couple other some picnic shelters like we have at Long Lake and City Park for people to use. Then we'll open the field up. We got to look at planting grass and different things just for green space and play area. And then also then looking at getting some type of playground equipment, that type of stuff to fund to put in there. And field, pickleball, possibly frisbee golf has been very big.
Okay, thank you. Bruce, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. The last item that we have on the agenda is request from the Detroit Lakes Chamber about using the pavilion. We've deferred that till next month so we can get some more information on that. So that's the last items on the agenda. One thing I would just point out to all of you, I think you got an invitation for the pickleball dedication on June 27th at 11:30. And I think they would like a response back because they're ordering pizzas. Mayor, I would just like to mention this to you and the council and the city. We've had people from out of town that have now been using these pickleball courts, and we are getting a lot of compliments from both residents and out-of-towners. And some of these folks are from much larger cities than Detroit Lakes, and they're just amazed that we have this facility in our town.
Yeah,
I think
these
it's
are neat looking courts. And they get used a lot. I see people down there all the time.
And actually just officially being used this week, last week I should say. We put the nets up, we had to let it cure, and so it is officially open. But we'll do the ribbon breaking in June 27th.
So, but you want the council to let
If you just let me know.
you know if they're going to attend, okay.
Just give them a head count is all.
Very good. Okay,
And
thank
I
you.
believe the north side is going to challenge the south side to a pickleball game that day, so.
That's my understanding, it is a match, John.
You have that right, Bruce. Winter and I are working on that right now. We've been practicing.
That's all you're
training, yes.
Madeline, we're down to finance again, I think.
Agreed. Item A, consideration to the first reading of ordinance 448 enacting a 0.5% sales tax on all taxable items in the city of Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. This, of course, refers to our local option sales tax that is going to be funding our new police station. The Finance Committee is making a motion to give consideration to that first reading.
Okay, is there a second?
Second it.
Motion has been made and seconded to give first reading of ordinance 448, enacting a 0.5% sales tax on all taxable items in the city of Detroit Lakes, purpose of which is to construct a new law enforcement facility. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. Now, are we intending on a second reading at that special meeting? Is that the idea?
That's correct, Mayor and Council. Planning on a special council meeting on June 20th, Thursday, June 20th at 4 o'clock, where we can do a second reading on this ordinance. There's also a accompanying resolution that we'll have to approve. The goal is to get all this submitted before the end of the month, the end of June, so that way Department of Revenue can then implement the 0.5% sales tax and have it started for the fourth quarter of 2019. So for retailers out there, that would mean collection would start October 1st.
So does anybody know that they cannot make that meeting? Bruce cannot?
We need 2/3 for that vote on that?
Correct.
Okay. So if you wouldn't mind getting in touch with Jamie and Matt, make sure that they're going to be here. Okay, thanks.
We have taken care of B and C. D is acceptance of the DLCCC annual financial statement and the independent accountant's audit report for the year ended August 31st, 2018. This is the usual acceptance of financial statement and audit report that was not able to be done when it should have been done last January or so, so that's why we're doing it now. The Finance Committee reviewed this and moves to accept that statement and that audit report.
Okay, is there a second?
Second it.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept the Detroit Lakes Community and Cultural Center annual financial statement and the independent accountant's audit report for the year ending August 31st, 2018. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Item E is consideration to accepting the American Legion Campground annual financial statements and the independent accountant's report on agreed upon procedures for year ending December 31st, 2018. And I will put a motion in for the second, and then there'll be some discussion that I'd like to do. So the Finance Committee certainly reviewed those financial statements and that accountant's report, and so moved to accept.
Second it.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept the American Legion Campground annual financial statements and the independent accountant's report on agreed upon procedures for the year ending December 31st, 2018.
And then I'm going to call upon Pam to just briefly state what that actually is, the independent accountant's report on agreed upon procedures.
Okay, Councilman, under our new management agreement with the American Legion Campground, it required them to have an agreed upon procedures audit or engagement every year. This was the first year of the new management agreement with them, and so this was the first year for the agreed upon procedures engagement. We expected that there would be some deficiencies down there just because of the changes that we've been doing down there, and we got the engagement report back. There were some deficiencies, but we sat down with a group from the campground, and Councilman Zeman was there as well. We went through the agreed upon procedures findings with them. We also gave them a punch list of the action items that they needed to do to bring themselves into compliance for next year. And they're working on becoming compliant. They've put in a new computer system. They've changed some of their processes already, so we'll be waiting for next year's report.
Thanks, Pam.
Okay.
I think we can say it was a very successful year for both the American Legion Campground and for the city as a result of their success.
Okay, further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries.
Item F, consideration to a resolution amending Section 210 of the City Code relative to the right-of-way ordinance fees. And Kelsey, I'm going to call on you just to explain a little bit about what this is, right-of-way ordinance fees.
Yes, Mayor and Council, earlier in Public Works, we did the second reading of a new right-of-way management ordinance. One of the additions in that ordinance is a provision for a small cell wireless right-of-way permit, so we need to establish a fee for that. The resolution does that. The $190 fee is the same fee that we charge right now for our other right-of-way permits. So it's $190 for the first 5 facilities and then $190 for each additional 5 facilities. We also are allowed to charge a fee for basically review of any standalone support structure that they want to install. And the fee for that is $1,000 for each support structure. And then part of the enforcement of the ordinance, we added an administrative penalty of $200 per day, which again is another tool in our toolbox for enforcement of our right-of-way ordinance.
Finance Committee gave consideration to that resolution, and we so move.
Second it.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve a resolution, amending Section 210 of the City Code relative to right-of-way ordinance fees. Discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Okay, items G and H kind of go hand in hand. In fact, we really need to understand item H before we can do item G. So I'm going to call on our city attorney to give us a brief overview of what is standard terms and conditions for project contracts for engineering services means.
Probably have the engineer explain this too, but I'll try to be brief. He would go on for a long time. Back in 2013, the city approved and adopted what we call the standard terms and conditions for project engineering services. And we've been using standard terms for every project engineering, so like one of the Weston Willow or one of the projects that we do. Most of those engineering contracts have been with Apex, but not all. We also have the same standard terms and conditions relative to some of the other engineering services we receive. In some negotiations with Apex related to item G, which is similar but technically different for the city engineer contract, they noted a couple of requests and a couple of items that we negotiated with them on. Those changes to the standard terms and conditions for project engineering services are substantively essentially on 2 different things. We required a little higher insurance minimums, and in exchange for that, we agree in the project, the standard terms and conditions, to limit the liability of the engineer to the amount of their insurance. And I would note that the insurance was about double what we had previously been requiring. And then the other issue related to the ownership of what are called the works. So when an engineer puts the plans and specifications together, the drawings, the question is who owns that? And we, in this version of it, agree to separate but concurrent mutual ownership of those documents. So for instance, the city would always have ownership and access to those documents in the future, regardless of what engineer was providing the services. But similarly, if Apex is creating some particular design for a project here in Detroit Lakes, they would be able to use that same design on projects that they might do for other cities. So substantively, those are the changes to the project engineering standard terms and conditions. Those same changes to some degree affect the city engineer contract, which is item G. The city engineer contract is very similar to the city attorney contract. Under the charter, the council designates a city attorney, and it also designates a city engineer. And by designation of the city engineer and the city attorney, there was a recent case in the last couple of years that extended the statutory immunity of an employee of the city to contractors like the city engineer and the city attorney for just certain items that would relate to run-of-the-mill, day-to-day engineering services. So for instance, questions that are asked of John or questions that are asked of me, but not providing designs for project services. So that's why there's two separate action items for you. And I think based upon our discussions with Apex, and this has been going on for a couple of years, right, John? We've come to I think a good agreement, and so it would be my recommendation that the council approve both of these contracts.
Thank you, Charlie.
We'll do G first.
Okay.
The Finance Committee certainly reviewed the contract for professional engineering services with John, and we so move.
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the contract for professional engineering services with John Pratt of Apex Engineering. Discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
H is consideration to approving the standard terms and conditions for project contracts for engineering services. The Finance Committee reviewed this and moves to approve.
Seconded.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the standard terms and conditions for project contracts for engineering services. Discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
Oh, and my goodness, the last item.
Yeah.
Consideration to approving the electronic funds and wire transfer policy. This is giving consideration to a resolution authorizing the finance officer to make electronic funds and wire transfers as necessary to conduct the city's business. The Finance Committee certainly would like to give authorization to Pam to do those things, so we so move.
Seconded.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve a resolution authorizing the finance officer to make electronic funds and wire transfers as necessary to conduct the city's business. Discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion say aye. Oh, I'm
Do we
sorry.
need to do the policy first?
Yeah, there should be a policy adoption and then the resolution.
We did it backwards.
Okay.
Finance Committee moves to approve the electronic funds and wire transfer policy.
Okay.
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the electronic funds and wire transfer policy. Discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Now we do the same motion.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve a resolution authorizing the finance officer to make electronic funds and wire transfers as necessary to conduct the city's business. Discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Madeline. So Pam, what did you do before? Were you not able, did you have to write a check or what?
No, we have been doing wire transfers, both incoming and outgoing. It's a new requirement under some of the GASB regulations that
Okay. That we don't want to know.
you give me annual authorization to do it.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Ron, Public Safety?
Okay, item 8A, consideration of approving an architect for the police facility project. About 2 weeks ago, the members of the Public Safety Committee interviewed 5 architectural firms. We narrowed it down to 2, and then we did more discussion, and we would like to recommend the name of BKV Group to be the architects for our new police department. The committee recommends, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve engaging BKV as the architect for the new police facility project. Discussion on the motion?
I'd like to also mention that BKV has done over 80 police stations. They really do specialize in police departments, so we've got a good firm.
Further discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And that's it, Ron.
Yes, that's all you have.
Dan, we have a couple items on the liquor gambling control.
Yep, item A, we are going to defer action on this one, get a little bit more information back, and see this one back later on next
Okay.
month or sometime. So item B, we got a consideration of the request from the Detroit Lakes Regional Chamber of Commerce for cash sponsorship of $1,250 for the 4th of July fireworks display. Committee reviewed this, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve a donation from the liquor store to the Chamber of Commerce for the July 4th fireworks display in the amount of $1,250. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Dan. I only have one recommendation for the council on our advisory boards. I'd like to recommend that Josh Hochgraber be reappointed to the DLCCC board for another term.
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded to reappoint Josh to another term on the DLCC board. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. There is an event tonight, Larry, at the high school gym. Do you want to just briefly mention what that is?
Minnesota Housing is having a community solutions event. They're doing some strategic planning, and they have a new commissioner, and that meeting starts at 6 o'clock at the Detroit Lakes High School gym.
Good. It's pretty timely. As Kelsey mentioned, there's a special city council meeting on June 20th at 4 p.m. In the council chambers. Our quarterly joint governance meeting, July 2nd, will be hosted by the Detroit Lakes Schools. There's a Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities Summer Conference in Bemidji, July 24th through the 26th. Please contact Glory if you wish to attend by June 24th. Roger Molson is retiring from the Detroit Lakes Public Utilities, and there will be a retirement open house on Friday, July 26th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. with a short program at 1 p.m. at the Electric Warehouse on North Tower Road. Bruce, anything further for the good of the order? Dan? Ron?
I just want to say that we're going on 6 months, got half the year in already. I have to say that all the staffs, all the way from the police department, with their busy schedule coming up, and looking at their report here from last month, they got a lot of things going on. The fire department's been very busy this year with fires already, plus they're all trying to recruit people for the fire department because they got 8 people going to be, between now and then, going to be retiring, including our chief. And so if anybody wants to be a fireman, they've had a number of open houses, but talk to either Ryan Swanson or Harry Scott Flynn and let them know that you got interest, because they could certainly use you. But also to the staff here, we've had a lot of projects going on here, all the way Kelsey's in Pam and the rest of the staff. They've been involved with a lot of finance work because we've been working with the library and the Mountain Community Center, working at the airport, working on studies here with the new police department, also looking at works coming up with the Public Works building. So there's a lot of work, and then you throw in just the everyday work of doing all the street and road work that comes up. Brad in his department's done a great job. You got to remember they've had a later start this year because of the long winter, so they're trying to get caught up and getting everything done in a shorter period of time. But I just think that we've got a good staff and crew all the way around through the city, and they're making our town look the best we can for the summer months here. And Father's Day on Sunday, and after that it's busy all the way through Labor Day. So just want to say thanks to everybody for the great jobs they're doing.
Good point, Ron. Thank you. Madeline?
Just a couple things. First, big thank you to Pam and the people that work on the audit, because I know that's a huge, huge project. Every year she does such a great job for us. So I just wanted to commend her on the extra hours I know she spends on the audit. The second thing is, for all of you, there's going to be a tour of the E2Q facility on Thursday, June 13th, so that's just like 2 days from now at 5 o'clock. And if you have not toured through that building, please take the time to do that, folks, because it is absolutely amazing. It is really something. So you've got the opportunity to take the tour, don't miss it.
Will you send out an email, please, Lori? Natalie? Jay?
No, sir.
Dan?
Just excited it's summer in Detroit Lakes again. Like Ron said, the town is shaping up. Brad's crew, the businesses, it's looking great. We've got a pretty town. I'm proud of it and happy to have people coming back again. So.
Good, thank you. So Chief Flynn, how many firefighters are we short now? Have you had some new signees or?
We're testing 6 new applicants tomorrow night.
So you're doing what to them? I couldn't hear you.
Testing.
Testing. Testing my hearing. So what will that leave us short then?
Well, we don't know until we find out how.
If all 6 passed though and they became firefighters, would that put us back to
The year will
full?
be 8 short
Okay,
if we took nobody.
okay. Very good. Anything else from the staff tonight? Okay, the business of this council is completed and the meeting's adjourned.